Madam Chair, can we just do the pledge first?
Absolutely.
Do pledge and roll call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I have a special request today. Gail LeBrecq is not here, and as we all know, Gail does the meeting minutes. So if you could, because we have no name tags, if you could just try to say your name before you ask a question or before you speak, that will just help Gail to go through and be able to do the minutes. I didn't realize that she can't see a portion of you guys, so she's not sure who's speaking. So if you can use your name, that will help her out a lot. And we really don't want to have to do it ourselves, so let's help Gail out. Okay, thank you. So today, let's do roll call. I'll start on this side today, if you would.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Representative.
Fred Plett, Budget Committee.
Evelyn Redmond. Samantha Kearns.
Joe Alexander. Frank Hobbs.
Richard Manzo.
Ellen Rockwood, School Board.
Richard Fletcher, Water Precinct. Bill Cordes.
Laura Stevens.
And Melanie Renfrew Hebert, Chair. We have excused today. We have Gail LeBrecq is excused, Stacy Belmore is excused, and Lauren Dukas is excused today. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the Grassmere Water Precinct budget presentation. So if you could take a moment to introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic.
I'm Bruce Rand, and I'm the treasurer of the Water Precinct.
And I'm Tina Daniels, and I'm the clerk of the Water Precinct.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, as I just want to jump on it before Fred does, can you tell us a little bit about Grassmere Water Precinct?
Yeah.
We have some new members who may not be familiar.
Well, first of all, we're located in the Grassmere section of town. We have about 230 customers. We are a wholesaler of water, which we purchase from the Manchester Water Works. So we do no treating of the water. We have the hydrants within the precinct are controlled by us. We purchase them, we install them, we maintain them, and that's about it. We're a separate entity from the town of Goffstown, funded by water sales to our customers. We are required to file our financials with the DRA, but we have no impact on the town of Goffstown tax rate.
Perfect.
So we're sort of self-funded.
Thank you. And just for continuity from our other presentations, could you tell us how many people work for the Water Precinct?
There are 3 commissioners elected. There is one superintendent of the water works. There's Tina, who is the clerk, and I am the treasurer.
Fantastic.
We're all part-time.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we will let you, does everyone have the Grassmere presentation?
I've tried to cover the highlights of our presentation. Basically, we're fighting inflation like everyone else in our standard consumables with office equipment, office supplies, postage, those type of items. In the durable equipment, we run into the same thing. The meters and the hydrants are just, they used to be about $160 for the meters, now they're $200 each, with a $20 increase next year to $220 each. The hydrants are gone from around $2,700 to like $3,400. So we're all faced with that as the major impact. Electric bill is incredible. I mean, ours is going to double this year.
Join the club.
You're right.
Bruce, if we have a question from
Yeah.
Kelly?
Hi, Bruce. Kelly Boyer. Could you give me the total of the 2023 budget? It looks like on paper it went down, but I'm seeing some increases.
It went down, it's $352,459.
Where was that large cut from? because that doesn't,
I'm not seeing going up.
yeah, I'm not seeing how that's possible.
Was there a math error somewhere?
There must be a math error
Okay. I'll add it
somewhere
up,
in there.
thank you. I got a big calculator on here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do it.
So Kelly's going to add that up on her calculator, see if we can figure out, but
Is that just a calculator? No, ma'am, okay. There's a whole iPad.
Giant, like a desk calculator.
okay.
I did this on Excel, so I'm embarrassed that I,
Jim, sometimes you miss a column. You have to check when the add function is covering all the columns.
no, when I look at this, I can see what Kelly's saying. I fully understand that, and
No problem, let me just do it real quick. You can keep going, I'm sorry, Bruce, didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm open to any questions that you may have. There is one thing that, in the 2022 budget, we had budgeted $75,000 for 2 grants that we were given authority to pursue by the DES. Unfortunately, things did not happen as quickly as possible, and the process, it goes from DES, and then it has to go to the Attorney General, then it has to go to the Executive Committee, and then it goes back to DES, and, you know, it wasn't awarded till really August, the work started on that grant. We applied in November of 2021. So no payments have been made. Once the work is done by the engineering firms, they will submit an invoice to me. I have to submit it to DES. DES then reimburses us directly, and we pay the contractor. So that $75,000 is not really impacting our operating income, because it's a wash for all intents and purposes.
So you're talking about the engineering and asset management
Right.
line on the bottom?
Right, those are
of
both
the
grants.
page. Fred, yes.
What happens to any surplus or shortfall?
Put into a, well, shortfall, we can't. We have to go through the courts to overexpend our budget, like anyone else does. We have an investment with the New Hampshire Public Investment Trust, and the surplus goes into that. We reinvest it.
And what's the size of that surplus right now?
It's around $420,000.
Okay, that's a little over a year's worth of budget then?
Yeah.
Yes, Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, thank you, Bruce.
Yep.
My question is around the Waterworks 7% rate increase.
Right.
Are you confident, so you're keeping the budget line the same? Are
Yes.
you confident that that budget line is going to be able to?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am.
I trust the expert
Yeah.
there.
Well, you look, we're only at 94,000 through October.
Awesome. Thank you.
Was that, Madam Chair?
Yes, Fred.
Was that 7% increase last year or prospective?
October 1st, 22, it went into effect.
Because you were over budgeted last year, that's what you're saying.
No. We're not over budget on water.
Over
Fred.
budgeted in the past. 'Cause you got 140,000 and you only get 94 so far.
Right.
Yeah. What's your fiscal year?
January 1. Same as the town.
If I can clarify for a second, Bruce, I think that what Fred is saying is that you might have over-budgeted for
Oh,
water in
okay.
the past. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, probably did. We anticipated the car wash opening a lot sooner. The one down in Grassmere, the brand-new one.
Yes.
And it didn't open until October or so.
So, are there any other questions from members about the specific services or any individual items that are on the budget? Yes, Samantha?
Thank you, Samantha Kearns. So on the meters
Yes.
line, I know, so through November, we've you've only used $24,014.
Right.
Is that because you haven't purchased some meters yet?
Right,
or-
we have a $5,000 bill sitting there to be paid in December for a broken meter at,
Medfield?
right, that is being replaced now. And we also are planning on buying an additional 50 meters, new meters. We're doing a whole new meter program of the entire precinct over 2 years.
Okay.
And they're about $200 each. So we're gonna spend the best part of the 40,000.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on that question, Bruce? I see you have new and repairs for hydrants.
Yeah.
And you said they're about $200 each for new.
No, the hydrants are 34,
Oh,
well,
the meters, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong line.
3,400, yeah. The meters are 200 going up to 220, we know already.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Kelly, did you have, no, Fred has a question?
How may we water this budget down? No answer
I
required.
apologize, Bruce, we're getting very close to the end of the budget process.
I've been on this committee for years ago.
I appreciate
And it was
that.
a lot of work. I appreciate what everyone goes through.
I have the number.
Okay. Yes, Frank.
Hi, Frank Hobbs, thanks for coming tonight, guys. My question is on the electric.
Yep,
It shows 2022, the budget was 34.5, year-to-date approximately 34, and you're budgeting 58,000. Extrapolate it out, that'd be somewhere around 38,000. Do you have other expenses that you haven't paid?
I don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah,
think you're
with the
looking
right
at-
budget?
You're looking at the Goffstown Village Precinct, not the
Oh,
Grassmere.
I'm sorry, that was my next question. 3,500 in 2022,
Which
Right.
line is that, Frank, if you
It's
would?
the electric.
the electric.
There's no lines.
3,500, 2022 budget. 2023, 5,500.
Right.
Year-to-date, 2718.
Yep.
Are there other expenses that haven't been paid yet? or-
Yeah, the December bill hasn't come in.
Okay.
But the increase is due to what we all know, that electric rates doubled.
Right.
So, threw a number in for 5,500. I hope that's adequate,
Are
but
they just rear-loaded and
Pardon?
there are expenses that you have to pay near the end of the year? or-
no, we get a monthly bill.
Okay.
So we'll come in at 3,000 or so, probably 3,200 by the end of the year. Our rate has gone up tremendously
Okay.
in the last 3 or 4 months, and it's going to go up. I mean, actually, 4 months of this year, we're at like 8 to 9 cents. Then it went to 11 to 12, and now it's at 22 cents.
Gotcha, okay, I see what you did.
And then also to add to Bruce, Lee Minnick, I work for Bruce as a superintendent, and we've got fire pumps that can kick on that haven't been needed this year at that particular pump station. And as soon as you do that, the electric will skyrocket. So you always have to have extra room in your electric.
Gotcha, yeah. That was mainly my question.
Just say, I know something about this field, having spent my life in it. The electric rates didn't double, but the energy charges did. And they're going up again in February. So I don't worry about this budget.
Oh, thanks for the good news, Fred.
Thank you. Kelly, did you have an answer to the
It's
numbers question?
$400,717.
So what did they miss?
I'm not quite sure.
For the 23 budget?
Yes, that's the
say that
total
again?
number. It's $400,717.
17?
Yes,
I apologize.
that's okay.
So, it would be interesting, it would be nice to have it completed.
I will correct it and
I absolutely know you will, sir.
send it.
So looking at the budget, the numbers are appropriate, they're what they should be. It was just the total that was miscalculated. So, given that, are there any other questions about the Grassmere budget? Yes, Joe?
Just for a question for the chairman, do we have to move this to public hearing separately, like every other budget?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to make that motion when applicable.
Okay, so I have a motion by Joe to move this forward to the public hearing. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Fletcher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you so much, sir. And if you could adjust that number and submit a new copy to Danielle.
I'll get these to Danielle and also promptly. I'm gonna go back and check I did it on Excel, I don't know,
You have to check, we cover all of I said columns, I meant rows, but make sure you have all the rows in the sum.
If he brings out ducks about this, then we'll have another pun. But I do actually have a request to ask of Grassmere, and that is, could you please bring to your board that we would like to know if they're intending to have a representative sit in their water seat on the Budget Committee for the 2023 year.
we'll bring that up at the next meeting and see if any of the commissioners are willing to sit on the board.
If you could ask them, what we'd like is an answer in writing,
Okay,
and they can give that to Danielle as well.
yeah.
May I add, you're
Yes.
hurting us by not having an appointed representative and not filling it. You're hurting us because we have to make quorum. So if you have some dead body that will sit in, that'd be great.
Does it have to be a commissioner?
Does it?
No, but
think
they
it
do
does.
have to be appointed by the commissioner,
Okay.
so.
I believe you have to be a subscriber too, don't they?
Yeah, they have to be you have to be a resident of the district to be an officer, so I would assume the commissioners and Tina and I, who are elected, all live within the district. So this person would be elected by us, by the precinct, at the annual meeting, would have to live within the district.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and they can submit that to Danielle.
Yep.
And just let us know whether or not to expect someone for the next season.
Meeting. Okay.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming to talk to us today,
Okay.
and have a happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the,
I'm not sure if the village is here ready to present. Absolutely.
Sure.
Can I move you down to the end, sir?
Sure.
I'm leaving.
Hi, thanks for coming, and we all have a copy of the village precinct budget as well. Looks like this. So we've been asking, as was suggested, could you tell us your name and then a little bit about the village precinct?
Okay, the Goffstown Village, my name is Lee Minnick, I'm superintendent of the Goffstown Village Precinct. We're located in the village section of town. We service about 1,200 customers. We make our own water. We don't buy it from Manchester. We've got a reservoir and well water that we use. We've got 2 dams up on the mountain that we maintain. We maintain the fire hydrants in the village area of town. That's about it.
And do you know how many people work for
3.
3?
Yeah, and then we have a board of 5 commissioners.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, yes, Kelly.
Hi, Lee, would you mind just going through any of the significant increases on here and what the projects are for next year?
Pretty much the most significant one is the work on our dam. We applied for an HHPD dam grant and an ARPA funds grant for the dam. And the total is about $1.3 million, or just short of that. And that work is supposed to take place next year. We've been doing engineering this year for it, leading up to next year.
And those grant funds would also be included in revenues?
Yep, yes, they are.
Great.
Thank you. So we'll give the members a moment to take a look at the numbers and see if they have any questions. Yes, Fred?
First of all, what you just said, that's appearing under 4901 dam rehab.
4901.
With the grants?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, yeah.
The expenditure.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, dam rehab.
Okay, that's where the money spent,
Yep.
and you got offsetting revenue from.
Yeah, it's on the front page under 3409 at the bottom.
Ask you the same question. What happens to any surplus or shortage in your accounts?
It goes into a savings account. I mean, it becomes our general funds, and we have approximate, I don't have the exact amount, but it's in the 600 somewhat $1,000 range.
Okay, and that's okay, the budget for 23 is 2593, so that's like a quarter of the budget.
It's realistically, even the 2022 budget had some of that dam money in it, had about $300,000 worth of the.
But your surplus is about, your
It's
savings.
more than half our budget.
Huh?
We have more than half our budget in surplus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's reasonable?
If everybody defaulted on paying their bills, we have ways of shutting off water and things like that. The town, I think the town pays us, what is it for hydrants? The hydrant revenue is $86,000 every year that we'd assume wouldn't get, that would be paid no matter what. So I don't believe we'd ever fall that far short.
Yes, Mr. Fletcher?
The surplus money that we have in an account is probably, like Lee says, half of what we would take us to run the water department. And over the years, that builds some more, and eventually the goal is to get it where our budget is. So if something happened, we'd have the money to run the waterworks for a year.
Thank you. So I'm noticing on the first page, the two that stand out the most to me are the new services.
Yeah, that's, we charge $2,500 entrance fee to every unit that gets added to our precinct. Currently, we have the factory building at 96 units. We anticipate that most of that will be filled out, and then on Bog Road, they got another 76 units that we figure will probably be we're averaging about half done. So that's how we're coming up with that figure. And then there's 17 on, down by the baseball field, still to be turned on.
Now, they'll need some water for that landscaping they had out front.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. The second one was the new main. Could you just describe that for us?
The, under the new mains, that's the developer over on, for the factory. 2 years ago, we went in and put the main on East Union Street out of our budget for them before they paved the road. And that's their reimbursement to us for that.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the Goffstown Village precinct? Hearing none, yes, Joe?
I will move this to public hearing.
Thanks, Joe. I have a motion by Joe to move it to public hearing.
Second?
Nope, Richard got it.
Okay.
You put his hand up twice.
Okay.
Seconded by Richard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. The motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Lee, for coming and for taking the time to do this today.
No problem.
Have a happy holiday.
Thanks, you too.
It's just walking in, so maybe we can get some of these, through some of these.
Yeah, let's do that.
Moving through it.
Okay, so we're going to jump a little, give Mr. Gross a moment to settle in. And let's move forward to the approval of minutes. We have quite a number to do today. So we have the October 3rd, 2022. That was the meeting that we had before the joint meeting with the SAU. And we discussed the member-at-large vacancy, election of chair and vice chair. So Jared, Joe, and Richard were absent for that meeting.
I move to approve.
Approved. So I have a motion by Fred and
Second.
seconded by Frank. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have two.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
You have to
Can you
ask.
put your hand up?
Any
Any
opposed?
abstained?
You have to ask for it.
Sorry. Any opposed? I'm not opposed, I just put my hand up. Any abstaining? 3, 4, 5. And so the motion passes. Okay, so then we'll move on to the October 18th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 18th, 2022 meeting minutes with corrections if needed.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Kelly and seconded by Joe.
Who was absent? I think I was.
I have Jared and Fred, so you were absent then.
Do I abstain from this one, or?
You were absent.
Nope, you
I was
were-
sworn in,
Yep.
so, okay.
You were sworn in
Okay.
for that one, so. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 7. Any opposed? No? Abstaining? Is Ellen, Fred, and Evelyn? Okay. Boy, I didn't realize how much I missed Stacy today. So that motion passes. So next I'll hear a motion for the October 25th, 2022.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Fred, seconded by Kelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Evelyn, you're abstaining? Evelyn and Ellen? See, that's why I need you there. Okay. Motion passes. So let's move on to the November 3rd. These were our deliberations with the SAU budget. Can I get a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the November 3rd, 2022 meeting minutes with corrections if needed.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Evelyn, did you have your hand up too? No. Okay, just Ellen. Motion passes. Can I get a motion for the November 10th, 2022? This is the deliberations on the SAU budget, Mountain View, the high school, and food service.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Fred, seconded by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Evelyn- Just Evelyn? Ellen, sorry, Ellen. Okay. Okay. And then a motion to approve the November 15th meeting minutes.
To
Motion,
approve the minutes of November 15th, 2022, with corrections if needed.
thank you, Evelyn.
Second.
I have a motion by Evelyn, seconded by Kelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Oh.
Evelyn, Joe?
I abstain.
Okay, so that's all of our meeting minutes done. Thank you so much. And that motion passes. Remember to say it at the end. Okay. So, our last is the SAU warrant article for the Capital Reserve Fund deposit.
So my question, did I don't know if I recall if I gave you a copy of what the proposed warrant is going to look like.
Nope.
I did
No.
not. I'll just start it off on both sides and then look at the middle. Thank you, Richard. Thanks. And then, same thing, this is in your packets, but this was the Capital Reserve Fund history. In case you didn't bring that packet, it's a copy of it.
Thank you.
So, first of all, thank you for having me. For the record, Scott Gross, Business Administrator for the Goffstown School District. The
Scott, if I
board,
could remind you before you begin that none of our members have name tags today, so we're asking everyone to say their name. So if they ask questions, they'll be saying their name, not to be awkward.
okay.
Don't be awkward.
No, not you. They're not being awkward.
Stop
They're-
being awkward.
They're just saying it because we.
I hadn't followed that all night, sorry.
This hasn't happened since I was little. My mother called me awkward. Okay.
I wasn't calling you awkward. I was calling
It's
us
okay.
awkward.
Trying
Please
to
continue,
flashback.
Mr. Gross.
If you lost my mojo. Okay, so the school board voted a couple of meetings ago to place on the warrant, which is article number 4, deposit into the Capital Reserve Fund that they established about 5 years ago for, basically it's to replacement of existing like capital assets. So in that Capital Reserve Fund history, since its inception, I wanted to at least provide the Budget Committee kind of an understanding of where the money has been spent over the years. Most notably, this past year, we used it to replace the scoreboard in the game field behind the high school, as well as we've allocated $300,000 for a theater renovation project here at Goffstown High School, and that's lighting, seats, flooring, painting. Since that time, one of the benefits of this Capital Reserve Fund is it is good for planning in terms of for CIP purposes, and but it's also important for unexpected things that pop up that were not budgeted for and that were kind of unknown. Unfortunately, we did have 2 things that transpired over the last couple of months. Our fire panel here at Goffstown High School is in a failure mode, and the board hopefully, but at the next meeting, will give authority for our facilities director to replace that fire panel. That's almost a $50,000 expense that we did not budget for, but due to the fact that we have a capital reserve fund, we're able to do that. And then the second one is we have our boiler, we have 2 boilers at Glen Lake School, and one of those boilers is also in a failure state, and the cost to replace the sections of the boiler are not all, cost to replace the boiler is not that much more than to replace sections of the boiler that need replacing, so we're going to replace the entire boiler, and that is in the neighborhood of about $36,000, again, not budgeted for, but because we have this CRF, we're able to do it. So the CRF has been a very important tool. In case you're wondering, I get this question pretty much every year, what are some of the things that we anticipate spending the capital reserve funds on in the coming years. We do look at our capital improvements plan in terms of guiding our spending. So a couple of the things are roof sections at Bartlett Elementary School, our cafe tables at Mountain View Middle School. Our fire panel is known, that's a known thing, so we're going to plan on that one, as well as we have an in-building transformer that has hit, it's about 30 years old, and we're told that we should be replacing that. Another one that's a possibility is we have a tractor here at Goffstown High School that is going to need replacement in a year or two. And there was also locker room floor. It's an epoxy floor that needs in the locker. So those are some of the things that are in CIP in that 2023, 2024 time range. Over the past, as you can see, we have asked for, the school district has asked for $200,000 deposits, and I know one of the members reached out to me and said, why is it $300,000 this year? Fair question. Two reasons for that. First and foremost, as many of you know, we're going to be embarking on a field renovation project here. Hopefully, they might break ground in another week or two, where we're going to be putting artificial surface. That artificial surface has anywhere from a 9-12 year plus lifespan. So it would be prudent for us to set aside about $50,000 a year for the eventual replacement of that carpet when that comes due. So if anything, with the cost of inflation and accounting for the starting to allocate funds to replace that in say 10 to 12 years, we're kind of neutral in that respect. So that is really all I have. Certainly welcome any questions, and I'll let the chair recognize others.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. I didn't want to throw you off at the end there.
You already got me thrown off in the beginning, so.
Thank you, Kelly Boyer. Scott, I just have a question on the Reserve History Fund. Was that money for the theater specifically earmarked? Was that project specifically earmarked for those funds? Or
The school board has budgeted, set aside $300,000. That it's actually $270,000 plus a $30,000 contingency for that project. So that project is going to happen. We thought we would be able to start it last summer, but we couldn't. So it's slated to begin at the end of the school year. And again, so there is, as you can see, Kelly, on July 15th, 2022, $475,000, but I wanted to let you know that we are earmarking that 300, so that net balance is only 148 and change. Of that 148, if the school board takes action, which I hope they do in 2 more weeks, that number will be down to about $50,000 of what's left. So with that, if the voters approve this, there would be, this year, this would probably have about $350,000 in that account this time next year.
Thank you. Brett?
Maybe you answered this, but I'm not sure I heard it. Article 5, discontinue Bartlett CRF. How much money's in there?
There is less than $7,800 in there, but the school board has already voted to liquidate it. So when, at the time, the chair is also the chair of the trustees of the trust funds. The school board will be sending over a letter to the trustees of the trust funds to liquidate that fund, and there'll be there might be $5. It's all what's ever left in terms of interest.
I have a philosophical disagreement of taking the whatever $7,800 and putting it in the general fund as opposed to rolling over to a capital reserve. The new capital reserve, plus the capital reserve fund deposit.
The reason why the board made that decision was that we had cost overages in terms of our windows replacement project, specifically at Bartlett, and since that capital reserve fund was created to address capital improvement needs at Bartlett Elementary way back, the most prudent use of trying to close that fund would be to liquidate it to cover the overage in that windows project. There was asbestos in the window caulking.
Okay. Now, with respect to Article 4, Capital Reserve, 150 years ago, I'm kidding, when I was on the Capital Improvements Committee, we objected at the time for school just putting 300, whatever the number was, aside without any plan. But they did that, and they're doing it now. And I would expect, like the town comes up with what the capital planning is over the next several years, and the town, the select board decides whether to take that money for capital reserve, take it out of the operating budget, or instead to put it as a warrant article, but covered either way. And I would expect the school to do some of the same thing, of planning, this is what the money's going to year by year. And it's coming out of the operating budget, we're including in that, or it's a warrant article. Instead, you're just putting $300,000 in blind. And I have a problem with that.
Thank you, Fred. Mr. Gross, can you explain how they came with
The way the school has participated in the capital improvements plan since its inception, and we have 4 pages dedicated. I know our facilities director, our IT director, and myself spent a lot of time, updating this. I think we have, 70 different projects on this CIP plan, ranging from some of the projects that I gave you. So roof sections, et cetera. I don't necessarily agree with the notion that part of a capital reserve fund like we're experiencing right now is unanticipated. We did not anticipate having a fire panel kind of crap out on us, nor did we expect the boiler to do the same. So capital reserve funds are reserve accounts for, to replace existing capital assets. Sometimes they're planned, and that, in this case, the theater is a great example of that, where you're setting money aside. And then the second one is, for unexpected. And
I'm building committee chair of Hillsborough County, and I heard the same thing in Hillsborough County, putting out one fire after another, things failing and there's reacting. You put some money into plan ahead and say what's failing next, and try to put a sequence together. Because when I hear it's unanticipated things are failing, I hear a lack of planning, quite frankly. Things should have been anticipated and provided for. That's my statement.
I would respectfully disagree with your assessment with respect to the school district. I think we do a great deal of planning, as with, if you can tell me when your appliances are going to fail in your individual homes, I would love to be a prognosticator of that one. I think we try our very best. We look at the average life of a lot of our mechanical systems, our roofing systems, and we try to plan for that. Sometimes financial things happen and you can't do it in that given year, but I also recognize that sometimes the proverbial stuff happens, and you have to kind of roll with that. And I think that's indicative of our own individual lives and how the town and school both operate. So,
Thank you, Scott. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first want to thank Scott. The school board and Scott and administration has been very transparent about future projects. And we had that conversation. I've been on the budget committee for 6 years now, and we've had that conversation about the transparency. I think what my question / comment is that we're talking about 2 different buckets of funding. We're talking about CRF, which is replacement, and then we're talking about an emergency fund, which you can keep up to a certain amount of your budget to use for emergency projects. And now, I think maybe 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the General Court of New Hampshire, in their intimate knowledge, granted you the ability to spend those funds without even coming to the budget committee. So now we have a fund that you have with probably a couple $1 million, probably more than that.
$865,000.
You have a lot of money in there to put fires out.
$865,000.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have money to put fires out in this, and then we have $300,000 we want to deposit into a capital reserve fund. So now I'm looking at what we've spent the CRF on. Really, none of these things are putting fires out. So the boiler, I've heard about every year for like 5 years. Would we actually spend this money on a boiler, or would we use the emergency funding to do that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're going to spend it, again, Ellen was at the school board meeting, both the fire panel and the boiler are coming out of the CRF. They wanted to know the exact pricing, because unfortunately, with the supply chain the way that it is, the prices are fluctuating like crazy, and the board asked to get a more rock-solid number, and we just gave them those numbers last night. So it's, like I said, $36,000 for the boiler and close to $50,000. It's $47,000 and change for the fire panel. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, so the board's voted to take
They
that.
will at their next meeting, and the reason being is that we've got 16-week lead time on one of those. So, in the past, we would be able to replace something within 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
Now, just to replace a camera could take you a year. The boiler and the fire panel, those could be anywhere from 8 to, say, 16-week lead times.
Okay, well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and I think that, a lot of these projects are important for the school, but to compare them to like necessary emergency funding, like we don't have some other fund to use if we need it, is like, we should at least be transparent about that too. That's all.
Yes, Evelyn?
Scott, can you clarify, because all of those items were included in your CIP planning for the school. These items you talked about, the roof sections, the transformer, the tractor, locker room floors. So is that actually money that won't be requested from CIP? You'll be using your CRF?
So if I could just clarify, in this document, and for those of you who have sat on a CIP committee, column G talks about a funding source, and it's a tax appropriation, it could be a grant, it could be CRF. The challenge that we have from a school district perspective is that there are some things on our CIP that are not eligible to be used for the capital reserve fund, because the capital reserve fund was created to replace existing capital assets. Some projects, I'll give you a good example, like we have like these Wi-Fi units, right? They're about $750 to $1,000. If I had to replace 100 of them in a building, which we have to do, those would not qualify under, I can't use the CRF for that. It doesn't meet the $5,000 capital asset requirement. Just, there's certain things that just don't. Certain things are not really part of the building itself. I can't do it. There's certain things I can't use it for. Whether it doesn't meet the accounting definition of a capital asset, in this case, these Wi-Fi devices. And then there are, so that's one of the complexities to it. And getting back to what Joe was saying, we do have what's called a contingency fund, but that fund could also come into play if we have a high number of special needs students who need an out-of-district placement. I can tell you that in Goffstown and New Boston, we've had 4 in the last month, which we did not budget for. So we are probably, in New Boston, odds are pretty strong, we're gonna have to use their contingency fund to address that. They happen to have a reserve fund for special ed as well, but these are the types of things that you didn't budget for it, you have to kind of deal with it. But not everything can be used for, you can't use a CRF for some things, and that's the complicated part. I don't know if I explained it right, but that's.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. You taking the time to answer questions about it. Are there any more questions about the warrant article for the CRF for the school? Yes, Kelly.
I guess the question that I have, Scott, is, so like, I'm going to go back to the theater because that's the one that jumped out at me at $300,000, that was planned for, but why would something like that not go to a warrant article if we know that that's coming up? Like, we have the fund specifically for these items, but I don't know, I worry about, well, I don't know, is there any tie that the board has to follow what's on the CIP matrix to use those funds, or can
Generally
they-
speaking, that's what they do. Yeah, they don't,
But they don't have to, right?
That's what, since I've been here, that's, I mean, Ellen can speak to it. That's exactly what they do. It's what's on here. And so they try to, when you look at CIP, they try to align with what that funding source is. And they've been pretty transparent about that in terms of at school board meetings, and that's.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm just trying to make the correlation to select board, which is obviously a bit different, but, you know, typically we put those out on separate warrant articles for people to vote on. So I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
I think it also depends
balance,
upon.
are we getting away from that autonomy of voters to kind of have a say in what that money is used for, you know? I'm just asking the question,
Okay.
really.
I have a question of the chair.
Yes.
If we were to move this to public hearing, for discussion at the public hearing, that's not an endorsement by the Budget Committee, is it?
No, as a matter of fact, I've been informed today that we don't even need a motion to move it to public hearing. The school items automatically go to public hearing.
After the public hearing, any money article, the Budget Committee votes to either recommend or not recommend.
So I'm strongly, because of my concerns about the 300,000 not being earmarked to anything whatsoever, strongly urge, my personal opinion, to vote against it. Send a message for future.
Yes, Joe?
Well, and I think Fred's right. I've been voting against this thing for years. I think, like, there's no sort of accountability over where it's going. I appreciate the school board members, and we elect them to spend our money in a responsible way, but the fact that we're not, they can spend it on whatever they want. There's not really a lot of accountability from the Budget Committee I don't really love. But I do actually like what Kelly said, where, like, the select board has money, and they say, we want to spend it on this, and then they give it to the voters and allow the voters to make the decision over, you know, do we want to spend $300,000 to renovate a theater? You know, and I think that that might be something where, in the future, I hope that you'll take this, Ellen, to the school board and maybe recommend doing something more like that, where the voters are allowed to, you know, have a say in this other than what the elected representatives do on the town committees.
Yes, Mr. Fletcher?
I think we ought to think about this a little bit. Back about 3 years ago, we started this CI, this capital reserve fund for specific things like the firearm box. And other items like that, the small items, fix the roof.
See, I'm trying.
And when I voted in them days, there was a lot of people that weren't there that are sitting here today. But I voted for $200,000, figuring that's what we would put into this fund every time. And so I can only say to myself, I wonder where it goes from here. It's 300,000. Will it be 400,000 next year? It was my understanding at that time, and maybe I'm wrong, that it would be $200,000 we put in this, it would be ongoing.
Yes, Laura?
Laura Stevens. Scott, I'm not sure how sort of briefly you can give the breakdown of this. I thought it was clear, but I think I'm a little unclear now on what, how do I phrase it? On the different pools of money that there are and what the expectation is as to what they're used for. And I thought I knew, but then Joe asked the question and then I became a little unclear. Can we just go over that quick again so I make sure I have like the separation?
All right, so your first pool
Yeah.
of money would be your budget,
Right.
okay? And that's what you all are working on.
Yes.
And your budget you're comprised of your general fund, your special revenue fund, which is grants, no taxes are raised for that.
Yep.
And then your food service, same thing. Your next, I wouldn't necessarily, we'll call it your capital reserve fund, which was created by the voters several years ago and the intent of that was for the replacement of existing capital assets.
And that's the one that you mean that like certain things cannot come from it just because they
Correct.
don't apply?
I could not use a capital reserve fund the way that ours was created for that field renovation project, because it's new, okay? However, once it becomes an existing capital asset, once it's built, it becomes an existing capital asset.
So
I've often-
maintenance or anything could come from
So
that?
roofs, boilers, again, we don't have a theater in every building, we only have it in one. So it's, in this case, it's the seating and the flooring. It would be flooring. Air conditioning units, air handlers, those types of things are all, part of that. What Joe was inquiring about was school districts were given the opportunity to maintain what's called a contingency fund, and it's really more of a balance sheet item. It's balance sheet. So you're allowed to keep money on your balance sheet in reserve in case of an emergency. Joe's correct. Before, many years ago, in order to use those funds, that went before the Budget Committee, and the Department of Education Commissioner signed off on that. The law changed, and now that's no longer needed. The school board must hold a public hearing. I can speak only for this school board, because it has come up multiple times, is this school board, if they ever use it, is going to bring it to you, even though they don't have to. And again, that's what this school board, I can't speak for what a school board will do five years from now, but when they adopted that provision, and what that is that if there is an emergency type expenditure that was unbudgeted for, you would hold a public hearing. So one of these emergency expenditures might be, we had 2 or 3 special needs students who have to go to an out-of-district placement for a cost of $300,000. So in that case, they would hold a public hearing, entertain comments, and then they would be allowed to spend that without having to go to the Commissioner of Education. Again, we used it with the flooring here at the high school where the tiles were lifting and then we had asbestos under them. And in that particular case, it was under the old version of the law where we went before the Budget Committee and the Commissioner. Both entities approved that. So it is a little bit more relaxed in terms of the standard that's needed, but those are really the 3 pools of available funds. We've been sharing this since where the funds are being spent. In response to Mr. Fletcher's comments, I think initially it was set up at $200,000. I don't recall, I was part of this, I don't recall it ever being, it will always be 200. I think it was just, this is kind of where we're starting it, and just recognizing with inflation, 200,000 just doesn't go as far as it used to.
Okay.
And also recognizing that we have, for those of you who've been on CIP, I think we've got, let's see, $1 million of CIP in 2023, 2.7 in 2024, 2.2. So the district's gonna have to think about a bond, don't get me wrong, but I think that this capital reserve fund, Dick is 100% spot on. It's the intent of it is existing capital assets. Whether or not you agree or disagree that this theater needed it, is an existing capital asset, we can all have intelligent conversations about that, but, I personally view that theater as similar to replacing stairs and replacing a boiler, all those things.
Can I do a
It's
quick
part of
follow-up with
the
that?
building.
Yes.
So once the new field happens, then does maintenance for that?
Not maintenance, nope.
Not maintenance?
Not maintenance, no.
Okay.
So, maintenance has to be part of your budget.
Oh, okay, maintenance isn't the right word then, because that's not what I'm thinking. So if something not maintenance needed to be done, where would that money come from? I can't think of a good example because I'm not super familiar with how the field works. Would that
Well, I'm
come
giving you
from-
the example, so like, all of the site work, right, doesn't have to get redone, you have to replace the carpet.
Okay,
So let's just say that carpet, 10 years from now, costs $500,000 to replace it. That would fall under a capital reserve fund.
that was the question.
Okay, now, I think the discussion that's been had here tonight, and one which Ellen and I will take back, is that should those expenditures go before the voters citing the source? And that's fair, you know, I think that's a fair inquiry. But does it qualify? Yeah, once it's in place, that will qualify.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Fred?
Perhaps I'm not as up to speed as I should be on state law concerning schools particularly, and so I'm willing to be educated. But I don't see that the capital reserve fund, town or school, is restricted to just existing capital asset, period. It's a capital reserve fund to plan for future needs, whatever they might be, existing or future. And so that's maybe, and I'm admitting that maybe with state law applying to schools, it may be different from what I'm used to, by capital reserve general planning for town and school. We may have a totally new project for town, and if you know it's a need, and the townspeople agree to it, and you plan to it in a capital reserve, then you spend it out of capital reserve because you built up the fund to do it at the time. Now, it might be, you got a fire department, but maybe a new special fire truck we need, that we saw the need for several years. Or it might be a new library. We've got a library, we want to expand it, but maybe a total new one, I don't know. But I just don't see that it's restricted to existing capital projects that you're trying to replace, and that's almost, I won't use the words I was about to use, but it just, you want to have total planning of all your future needs, existing or not, and lay out what you need to do when, before they break down and it's an emergency. And yes, there's some things that are emergencies, I have them in my household, but I got a budget for that.
Yes.
You're partially right in the sense that it would have been better to have a capital reserve fund that did not use the words existing capital assets. But at the time, that's what the voters seemed to go for at all of the debate that went on. If you ask any attorney, whether they be a school or municipal one, they will tell you to have as broad language as possible so that Fred, everything that you said could be taken into account. They actually, the school attorneys argue against creating ones that just say Bartlett Capital Reserve Fund, because that's all you could use it for.
Fine.
Or if you say a roof capital reserve fund, well, guess what? If your boiler goes, you can't use it because the capital reserve fund was dedicated for roofs. So, so you're correct in that, but this one was created specifically to replace existing capital assets, not get anything that wasn't here, so.
And I like the ones that are specified, and if they don't come to pass, you can change them. I vote. Yeah, just leave it there.
I think, with my trustee hat for a second here, I think that the problem that we had with those where we could not change them and it left money on the table that couldn't be used and couldn't be moved to another.
You can with vote.
You can, eventually.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing. Thank you. Yep, that's exactly it. I was going to use the Bartlett one as an example. That money is there. It can't be used for anything else other than Bartlett. Even though there's need somewhere else within the same system. So Scott, how do you classify your funds for the school now? Do you put them by school or do you put them under the big umbrella of the SAU?
It is a general fund. As you've seen our budget, so the budget itself is, the funding plan is based upon school and or district, but as you know, we can't control sometimes where those needs are. So where we anticipated the needs, say at the high school, but then they more materialize at the elementary, we have to move an open position from the high school. That was the whole premise of our budget presentation for you this year, was that we're taking current positions and we're reallocating them to where they're needed. So it's a spending, the budget is your spending plan. Ultimately, it's a bottom line budget, and we just did $1 million worth of budget transfers, whether it be health insurance and moving,
Let me ask it in a different way. Are you creating any more school-specific line items for things that could be used across the schools?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Because it doesn't work very well if we need to move things from one school to the other.
Well, the other point is that the capital reserve fund it is a planning tool. I mean, we're talking about a $50 million budget, and we're, with all due respect, $200,000 or $300,000 here. You're trying to try to stay ahead of some of these things. Is it enough? No. And that's why I'm saying bonding is probably going to have to, when you look everything on here, probably bonding is what we're going to have to consider, in the years ahead, but sometimes we have monies in our budget to deal with some of these things, but in many cases, we don't. It just depends upon the dollar amount. I don't think we're going to put $300,000, generator in the budget.
Yes, Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me.
Of course.
I'd like to make a motion that we request the school board cut the warrant article back down to $200,000 until we get specific earmark project items moving forward, because I can't justify the $100,000 increase with no specific planning behind it. So I'd like to make that motion. It's an informal request of the school board. That's all.
Second.
Okay, so we'll take a vote on it. All in favor?
All discussion.
Any discussion? Yes, Kelly?
Yeah, I have questions. So the school board already voted on this, Scott. Are we within the time window for warrant articles? Would we have enough time?
This is going to go on the ballot.
For the
Right.
warrant article submission to make that request for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I rattled off heating controls, roof sections, locker room at Mountain View, cafe tables, fire panel, GHS tractor, in-building transformer. If you want the school board to tell you which one of those projects they plan on doing next year, that's not a hard lift.
I guess if I could, I guess I want to see what the extra $100,000 is going to do with all those items. So I'd just like to request.
I thought I explained earlier that 50,000 of that extra 100 is going towards the planning for the replacement of that turf carpet.
So every year you're going to hold on to an extra $50,000?
Yes.
Do you want to create a new capital reserve fund?
I don't think there's a need to, because it goes back to what we were saying before. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, but then the other 50,000 is really kind of addressing like just the huge inflationary costs of things that we did 2 or 3 years ago are now 20% more. So that's really, that's the premise of it, is that it's no, again, I hope I'm not being flippant when I say this, but the $200,000 is kind of the same. We've kind of adjusted that for inflation to get us up to say 250-ish, okay? And then the other 50 is really being specifically earmarked to replace that carpet in 10 to 12 years. That's really the gist of it.
I think if I could explain it this way, I don't think it's being earmarked as concretely as Joe and some others would like, as what's to say in a couple of years that money will actually go towards the field. Because you
that's
may
my
not
concern.
be here and other people may have other ideas for it, if it's not specifically put into its own CRF. Yes? Oh.
I was gonna say, so like, we have, obviously, we're dissolving this Bartlett capital reserve fund, but like, would it make sense to make a field capital reserve fund? Because it would be addressing just the concerns of that field.
I guess
it
the
would
argument would be, there's pros and cons, to that. Do you want to create multiple capital reserve funds and fund multiple capital reserve funds, or to have one that is more, that's more global, and recognizing that, again, looking at this and looking at where the money has been spent, it's not like there's no real discrepancy between the plan, which CIP, you folks see it, it's very transparent.
I haven't seen it.
It's in your Brandon.
It's been part of your packet, though.
Capital reserve?
Yeah.
Yep.
We went over it last meeting, too.
The whole thing?
Yes, Joe?
So I guess, did that motion pass, Madam Chair? I guess I'm just saying, like, to make a request that you earmark these specific items. And then I think I just want to recommend that the school board revisits the idea of the capital reserve fund and transitions to a more select board warrant article where all the voters can have a say over specific wants and needs in the town. Because from my experience, like, if we go to the voters and ask them to vote for fire panel replacement for, you know, I don't know, whatever, 150,000, I don't know what it is, but they usually say yes. Like,
What happens if they say no? Then what?
no means no. I mean,
Right, so what does that
But then
mean?
you can't-
Would you do that if you managed this operation? Would you, knowing that something like a boiler to heat a building, you're gonna put that in the voters' hands potentially for $35,000, knowing that if it fails, because somebody thinks it's not a great idea, that I can't heat the Glen Lake School? To me, that makes zero sense.
I have a lot of confidence that the
I
voters will
don't.
not vote.
I don't. And I say that, not disrespectfully, but I can't take that chance. I
Yeah.
can't not, that means I can't use the building, Joe. So, like, if I take that chance and I lose,
So so just to play devil's advocate, if we put a plow truck on warrant article and that was defeated, we wouldn't have a plow truck to plow our roads. How would we get around that?
you'd have to use a contracted service
Okay.
That's one option.
on that particular one.
Right, but
I have one in front of you, Evelyn. Okay, thank you.
it's,
Change.
you're talking about apples and oranges here, Joe, because a plow truck, you can get a plow truck anywhere, but you can't heat a building without a boiler, and you can't safeguard a building this size without a fire panel. So I agree with Scott, where, you know, these things are, some of them are safety concerns. And I think that they are following the CIP, items that they've already put in CIP and planned. So that's not something that they've neglected to do.
I guess maybe that was a bad example. I'm saying
Like
like
the
things that
theater.
aren't emergency, like the turf
theater Or
field,
something.
like
But
Like an auditorium.
$300,000 for a new theater. Put it on the ballot.
Yes, Mr. Fletcher?
Thank you, Madam. So Scott, in the long run, if you need a boiler tomorrow, it seems to me that in the past, you know, when emergencies like that happen, you find the money. The end of the year, you have X number of dollars left over coming down to the end of the year. You have the authority as a bottom line budget to buy that boiler and plan for it at the end of the year.
That's correct.
It's the same way with a fire alarm system or anything else. Now, I'm not denying that you probably need a boiler, I don't know. The sectional boilers, that they can change the section and all that. It seems to me that a brand new boiler costs more than it was to change the section, but that's neither here nor there. But there's nothing saying that when you have an emergency and you need a boiler, that you can't take the money and do it, and plan for it, that you'll have it left over at the end of the year.
I think that's a fair statement. That being said, when this was created, there was discussion, I remember it, that it would be to replace existing capital assets that are both planned and not planned. So it's also, and I think what the school board has demonstrated is that they've used CIP for the planned part, and then now they're using the CRF for the unplanned part. So I think they're acting in good faith, and again, my big takeaway here, if there's any takeaway that I've heard loud and clear, is that on an item like a theater renovation, that's something that might have been better served to go before the voters because it's non-emergency type of thing. I got that message loud and clear.
Thank you.
Hopefully Ellen did as well. We can kind of take that back as a lesson learned type of thing. But the vast majority of these things, I think, again, I want you to all know that was part of CIP. This was nothing, we try to be as transparent as possible, but that's my huge takeaway from tonight is on something like that, that's something where it could have been a warrant article, and it could have, yes, that's possible. I hear that.
That seems to kind of encapsulate what they were saying.
Yep.
So, did you have a question, Ellen?
Just real quick, so I'm clear. So there's a request here for the board to consider, school board to consider $300,000 separate warrant article for, let's say, the theater. And the CIP warrant, CRF warrant article for $200,000. So you're happier with us planning for, putting in for $500,000 than for $300,000?
No, I don't think that.
No, I
That's a
think the motion was to, I can't restate the motion
I
without a
think the
vote.
the motion that I had was to approve for $200,000 this year instead of $300,000.
I didn't take that.
And just to.
I didn't hear
to
that.
clarify.
I will tell you what I did hear. What I heard was, can you tell us how you're going to spend
Right.
the $300,000? And knowing that $200,000 was what has been asked previously, what makes up that additional 100? So I was prepared to come back to you to say, okay, here are the projects that the school board is looking to do using this CRF, of which I stated before, 50,000 is kind of set aside for a long-term, plan to replace that. So I'm going to come back to you with $250,000 of anticipated projects for next school year.
Yes,
And that's what I
Laura.
wrote.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard.
I heard both that and the motion that were two separate things. But, so as far as the theater is concerned, that's said and done, right? That theater project is happening, it's already been decided. So moving forward, that would be the type of project.
Yes.
To see on a warrant. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
That's what I got.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is the deal with that 300,000.
I keep hearing when I've seen the CIP, I haven't seen the 20-year CIP at all, to my
It
knowledge.
was been in our packet.
Was it?
We've had it.
Yeah. But, so that's something, a 20-year CIP, so the $300,000 in perspective, you'll need that money going forward.
7-year CIP.
Seven, whatever.
Okay, so we have, Scott has mentioned that there is money that could come out of there. We have the $300,000 on the warrant article as it is. Scott, are you saying that it could be brought down to $250,000? I just want to clarify.
Okay,
No?
No.
okay.
I can't say that because I'm not the school board.
I mean, okay. Are you saying that you could bring that back to the school board as a suggestion?
I don't know if that's what was suggested.
We will clarify that. Yes, Mr. Fletcher?
Madam Chair, well, I understood, I
In
seconded
this case,
the motion
$300,000 is way over.
that Joe made. And it was my intention when I voted that we were voting for $200,
200,000, right?
200,000.
Yes. Madam Chair, just
Yes.
to clear it up, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the school board cuts the CRF deposit to $200,000. Second.
Okay, so a motion by Joe to have the school board cut this, the...
Recommend. I don't think it's our call,
Can I ask
but
a question?
I can't recall saying that.
Hang on, I gotta say this first.
Okay.
To have the school board, Joe's recommending that they cut the amount to $200,000, and it's seconded by Mr. Fletcher. So now we can have discussion.
Madam Chair?
1 second.
So my feeling is I'd like Scott to go back to the school board and have a chance for them to, if we want more specifically laid out projects, more specifically lay out what the 300,000 would be used for. That's a statement.
Right?
Selectman Boyer was just kind enough to show me the CIP for 7 years, which I can't remember seeing. But for the school, it never exceeded $100,000 a year for the next 7 years. So The 200,000 is overstating it, possibly.
Can you help me understand that?
I'll move the question.
Pardon?
I'll move the question.
Love it.
So, let's take a vote. Yes?
Can we clarify what the motion?
The vote
Yes.
is to recommend, the motion is to recommend, the Budget Committee formally recommends the school board that we cut the CRF deposit down to $200,000.
But I moved the question, huh? You really need to take a poll if you want to move the question, because the question was $200,000, and we all voted on it,
So
and we
the,
had discussion. So now I move the question.
No, we didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote on it.
Well, we
Well,
just,
we did, we
I
said,
put my hand up, did you, Joe? And I saw
did.
several other ones.
But we didn't
We
call
were
for,
in
we didn't call for opposed, we didn't call for abstention,
Yeah.
we just paused and then said we wanted to have discussion.
Okay, I move the question.
Right.
He's moving it.
So I need to take a vote.
Those in favor of moving the question?
so you have to also, I'm sorry, just from a procedure perspective, when this happens, people are voting to move the question, which ends the debate. People would vote in favor of it if they're looking to end the debate, if they felt that they haven't had an opportunity to speak. And typically, a move the question is entered when pretty much everybody has had an opportunity to weigh in on it. If people in this room feel that they didn't have a chance to weigh on it, they would vote in the negative, and then they would be able to speak. And then, so that's how that usually works.
understood. Thank you, Scott.
I never saw that.
And I have a motion from Mr. Fletcher to move the question. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So second by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm still confused.
All opposed? 1, 2. Any abstentions? None. The motion passes, and so we'll move the question.
all right, so the motion on the floor is that recommend that the school board cuts the CRF deposit down to $200,000.
The motion
It's been
on-
moved and seconded.
Yep, motion on the floor by Joe to recommend that the school board cut the CRF down to $200,000, seconded by Mr. Fletcher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
7, 8, did I count that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ayes, and all opposed? 1, 2, 3 opposed?
Four.
4 opposed, sorry, Kelly. 4 opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. I'm sorry, any discussion? Is that?
No, you don't, no,
you're
we've
done.
already discussed it.
Yeah, we don't have a discussion.
Thank you.
But I just want to make a comment, per the recommendation of if the school board can obviously choose to do whatever they like with that amount and move it forward on a warrant article regardless of our question. But I'm just saying for my state, I was looking at this number here, it's $275,000 proposed for CIP for 2023. And I noted that there's 148,000. I'm doing the math. So if we stick with what's budgeted on CIP and then have that additional amount for potential emergency situations that don't fall under the emergency fund, that's
Where,
dictating.
point of order, or question, I should say, Kelly.
Oh, page 10 out of 10, I'm going
Right.
district-wide.
It's not district-wide, that's only the district. It's the subtotal school
I'm
project.
sorry.
Saw that.
You're
that's
right, I'm
where-
looking at the wrong line. You're right.
So that's where I think Fred got thrown off, was we have each school, then we have districts. So if you look at total school needs, it's $996,000 in 223. It's $2,697,500 in 2024. It's 2.1 million in 2025, 1.75 million in 2026, 941,000 in 2027, and then if there was a school built in 2028, it's 12.8 million.
So, yes, thank you.
Right.
I did read it, but then read it out loud on the
Okay.
wrong line. This amount and what's in the fund currently, just $148,000, 759.
What?
But
Current, what you currently have in here is
Correct, but
June.
that's gonna be,
50,000 of that and 36,000 of that were already planned to go to.
I'm aware. What I'm saying is I voted no to reducing that based on this. So I'm saying for me to vote, when we vote, whether to recommend this or not, I would like a response from the school board based on their adherence to this, and because that is quite a bit more than what we have in the fund and what you guys are asking
The
for. You know what I
fund
mean?
is not intended to be spent down from year to year. It's just not.
Right, but it will
And
be
if
if
anything, a
we follow
CRF
this.
that is well planned out would not spend it down year after year, that you would keep money in it so that you could, so to give you a good example.
But I'm agreeing with you.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that there's not enough money to cover these projects. And all
Oh, yeah.
I would like
Right.
to secure a vote to support this is for the school board to say, we're sticking to this plan, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I will say.
I voted no, and I'm
appreciate-
asking that from you.
Yeah, I guess I appreciate that, and it's, for me, this is a relatively easy exercise, because I will go in the years 2023 and 2024, and I'm going to look at the projects that are CRF next to them, and I'll add them up for you, and more than likely, it's going to add up to probably $500,000 or $600,000. It's not, it's easy for me to do.
I just wanted to share that as
I
someone who
appreciate that.
voted against
Yeah,
that.
we're good.
Can I ask a procedural sort of question?
Yes.
I think it's a procedural question. So regardless of what the warrant ends up being when it goes to the voters, how much, and I do remember from past years seeing explanations or descriptions for more information for the voter, how specific can you be in one of those as to what your plans are for the money?
You mean in the voter's guide?
The voter guide?
Yes.
Yeah, we can
yeah, that's
be specific.
I didn't know what the legal.
No, you can be specific.
Sorry, I don't mean to interject.
Yeah.
The
No,
legal
what?
language is the ballot, the warrant
ballot
article.
language, you can
What we
be very
choose to put into the voter's guide
We can pretty much.
is a, a nice explanation to help people make decisions.
But once we get to the ballot,
Right.
there's, I think, very specific.
It's this language.
It
That
is this
what will be on
exact
the
language with no other
Correct.
explanation.
Yep.
Okay.
No, we didn't vote something, right? We just need one more motion now? I think we have some upcoming. Yep.
Okay, so at the bottom of your agenda, there's a list of our upcoming meetings. I just want to stress how important it is that you plan ahead for the January 10th public hearing, to make sure that we have as many of us there as possible. And that's at 6 PM at Goffstown High School, January 10th. And we also have the deliberative session, again, try to plan ahead and make sure everybody's there. We have the snow dates are listed underneath it, but we have the deliberative session on February 6th, snow date on February 8th, and then the second deliberative session for the town on February 7th, with a snow date of February 9th.
Quick question.
Yes.
Samantha, because we all keep on forgetting to say it.
Yes.
So Thursday, I have in my little planner that we're having a budget committee meeting, but we're not anymore.
We are not, that
Okay.
meeting was
So I
canceled
don't
at
have to
our
ask
last
Danielle
meeting.
about it. And then, it still snows in January, so do we have a snow date for the public hearing?
We do not have one at this time.
Okay. I guess it's not really our job to pick that, but I don't know.
We might.
Maybe it still snows in January.
We
Maybe
can bring back to Danielle. I think there is one.
It's a little silly, but.
We can ask, and
Okay.
an email can be sent out to the budget committee.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Was that you, Joe?
Yes,
I was
Joe,
looking
second.
that way. Okay,
Say your name.
It's awkward.
I know. Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn from Evelyn and seconded by Joe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? No? Have a great evening.